Hello world, welcome back to my channel. My name is Amay. This is going to be the fourth video in our MCP series. If you have missed the first few, that's fine. The link is going to be in the description. Without further delay, let's jump right into it because we want to get smarter with AI. So let's go. In this video, we are going to integrate an API which already has an OpenAPI spec documentation. And second, like last time, we are going to interact with the API responses with natural language using AI chat. So just to recap what we did last time we actually used AI chat in order to build us an MCP server for an API which had couple of or more than a couple of endpoints hosted. And as an example, we used Postman, which has some dummy APIs that you can use. And we did that using AI chat, and it did go ahead and create a single tool for a single endpoint. Now, what we are trying to do today is, let's say, for example, you go ahead and your API has 20 endpoints, right? And you create 20 tools for it, maybe using AI, maybe manually typing in the code. So let me just minimize this and let me show you. So in our example, last time we had this dummy REST API example as a host, and then we had an endpoint called get employees, then get employees by ID, where you pass in the ID as a path parameter. But what happens with this is, let's say you have 20 endpoints, you have to write 20 tools for it. Even if you're using AI, it is time consuming. This time, what we will do is, if you already have an open API documentation and all the APIs are already listed there, FastMCP has a way where you can just pull in that documentation and it will actually try and go ahead and build all the tools for different endpoints that are listed in that documentation. So let me show you how we can do that with just few lines of code. And that's really awesome because tomorrow, let's say you add some new endpoint, you have to come back to your MCP server, and then you have to go ahead and edit or modify the code. But with this strategy, let's say our documentation is hosted somewhere remotely, you can just pull in the documentation, read it in your MCP server, and FastMCP will actually go ahead and build all the tools for the endpoints that are hosted on that host. So it will be more clear as we go into the coding part. In order to find the documentation on how you can integrate OpenAPI spec into FastMCP, you can go to your browser, type in FastMCP doc, open the official website, and then you can scroll down and click on Open API. So it's a little confusing. We are not looking for OpenAI API, we are looking for Open API. And here you can find on how you can basically read an Open API spec in a JSON format and build a tool. So that's what we are going to do right now. For an example, today we are going to use something called as Pet Store, which is quite popular, and I think it's hosted by Swagger. Maybe I'm wrong, but if you type in Pet Store OpenAPI, you can find the first link, click on it, and here you have a Swagger documentation. Just for test, you can go ahead and do a get call, and let me try get find by status and default values, whatever it is. Let me try to run it, execute, and then you have a response back. So this is a sample API like last time. We are not going to create our own API, but if you have your own API, you can go ahead and do this only if you have an open API documentation. So let's begin. Now here we have to create a new file just because I don't want to clutter everything into one. So I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it server underscore open API.py. Now you can either go ahead and use the documentation I showed before and type the code manually, or use AI chat. And that's what we're going to do right now because this is an AI focused video. So let's go ahead and open chat, create a new chat. Now, sometimes what happens is there are some documentations which are pretty new and AI might not have any context to it. So in Cursor, there is a way where you can actually add a documentation to your context. So let's do that real quick. Click on add context, go to docs, and then say add new doc. Now we go back to our doc over here and just add the reference, and that's it. We can just keep it as default and confirm. And if you go and see in the chat settings, you will see a go fast OpenAPI doc added here. That's good. Now we just want to create an MCP server using an OpenAPI documentation. So let me go ahead and type in the prompt to do the same. Before I go ahead, I will like to add the current open file as a context to the chat. And one more thing I want to experiment today is right now I do have access to GPT-5 models, which was released I think a couple of days back, and Cursor already added them into the IDE. So that's awesome. So I'm just going to experiment with GPT-5 fast. Let's see how it works. And we already have added the documentation as a context. We have added the tab as the context. Now let me go ahead and type in. You can just read along as I type. So I'm going to specify the OpenAPI spec documentation URL, which is going to be this, or rather this, sorry. Then I'm just going to say, just for my sanity, use FastMCP from, let me go back to documentation, check what's the syntax. Okay, I think I don't need to be too elaborate. I think they should work. This is the first time I'm going to use GPT-5 fast. Let's see how fast is it. Okay, it's going to read ahead all the files that I have in the repository. Let's see what it does. Right, it figured out the right file because we added context. And that's it. Boom. It did create a fast MCP server and it did use the from OpenAPI method. I'm not too sure why there are two URLs. Okay. All right, that's fair enough. Now it's going to go ahead and try to run the MCP server for us. Let's see if that works. All right, it made some changes. I'm not too sure what changes it did make. And now if you see, I think the server ran correctly. Okay, it goes so fast that you don't get time to see what are the things that it's typing in. All right, it did create a server. That's awesome. So we can go up and minimize this and see the code. So now let's read the code that the AI generated for us, because last time I said that's very important, right? So we can ignore this. It's just a bunch of commands. Then we have some imports. Now we have two URLs, and like I said earlier, I was confused for like quite a bit of seconds of why there are two URLs, but then I understood it. I'm going to explain now. So the first URL is to get the OpenAPI spec documentation, and which is here. And the second URL is where the API endpoints are hosted, and that's here. That's why we have two different URLs. So what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead first and fetch the latest and greatest of your API documentation. Let's say you update the API documentation tomorrow. You don't have to build a MCP server again or write any extra methods or extra tools. Like I said previously, it's just going to fetch the latest documentation and run it for you. And this is the URL where the API is actually hosted, like the endpoints where they are hosted. If you scroll down, we have a new method where we have built MCP from OpenAPI. What it does is it's pretty straightforward. This is the OpenAPI spec documentation that it's going to fetch, which is going to be this particular URL. And then it's going to create a client where the base URL is going to be the pet store base URL, which is going to be the URL where where the API is hosted, where the pet store API is hosted. So that's that. And then it's going to go ahead and use the FastMCP server method from OpenAPI to build an MCP server for us. So if you see here, it's going to take in the OpenAPI spec documentation, use the client, which in turn uses HTTPX and the base URL that we already have here. And then it's going to give a name for it, which it auto-generated. You can name it whatever you want, and it's going to return MCP. And this method is going to be called from the main. And that's it. So now let's try to integrate this MCP server with our Claude desktop. Last time I showed you how we can integrate with Claude plus Cursor IDE, but you get the point, right? Any AI tool that supports MCP server, it's going to be easy to integrate. But for this purpose, we're just going to use Claude desktop right now. So go back to your terminal, and which is Warp for me, and go to your project. Once you're in the project, please remember to activate your Python environment. Since I'm using Warp with AI, it auto-suggested on what I have to do. Activated my environment. Now I have to install FastMCP on Cloud Desktop. Again, it gave me a suggestion which looks correct. The only missing part is we have to type in the newer file, which is OpenAPI, and just enter it. And boom, it already did integrate with our Cloud Desktop. Now you can go to your Cloud Desktop and check if the integration was done correctly. So if you scroll to your settings, you should see a new MCP server, pet store, OpenAPI MCP. And now it has 19 tools, which means it has 19 APIs. So all those APIs were converted as tools with just, let me show you, with just single line of code, which is this. And that's it. Maybe not single lines, few lines of code to be accurate, but yeah, that's it. And previously, if you saw, we had so many tools here in place, right? Because for each API, it created a tool and it was a long file, which we don't need at all. With this, we can just do it within few lines of code. That's it. And now let's go back to our Claude desktop and try to query like last time. Now we are at our Claude desktop and we are going to interact with the API that we integrated using OpenAPI. And let's say I don't have any idea about what the API does. I just know pet store as a keyword. So I'm just going to ask random questions and let's see. Give me all the pets. And like always, it's going to ask me permission to use the tool, which I'm going to allow. So now it's getting pets by status. Let's see how it works. Okay, so now it gave me all the pets that are in the pet store, which is going to be, oh, crazy. Cat 2, cat 3, dog 1, dog 2, and whatever. So now what I can do is, if I go to tools, I can see there are like a lot of, oh sorry, not this one. There are a lot of other APIs added as tool that we can use. So for fun, let's try to add a pet. And I don't know what is the API specification of adding a pet, but I'm just going to say add a pet named, I'm just going to type my name just for fun. Okay, again, it's going to call a tool. Oh, it did add a pet called Amai. And now, okay, what else can I do? So it gave me an ID of 100. And now let me see what other tools available again. Okay, there is also something called as order a pet. I'm not sure how it works, but I'm just going to type in place and order for pet Amai. Let's see what it does. Wow. Okay, so it went ahead and ordered a pet like with my name, quantity 1. Now let's say I want to replace the quantity by 2. Let's see how it works. So replace the quantity by 2. Okay, it's going to go ahead and change the order, and boom, order updated successfully. So like I said, right, if you investigate more on all the API specification, you can do wonders with it. But right now this is just an example. If you have your own API, of course you'll know more on how it works. This is just an example, and this is awesome. And this brings us to the end of the video. Thanks for being with me for so long. I really appreciate it. Like I said earlier, this is a different space for me, and I'm learning new things each day. Like, for example, lighting setup, camera setup, mic setup. Recently, I got this mic with a windscreen on it. I'm still learning on how to set this up correctly so that my audio is clear. Uh, but like always, probably you also learned something from my video today, and that's how we grow. Each day is a new chapter. And thank you. I appreciate your feedbacks, good or bad. That will help me grow, and that's how we all grow. All right. Until next video. Bye bye. Thank you.